Hey Wolfpack, welcome back to Eunoia. Today we have a special guest, Asia Hilario. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I am good. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for
Um,
having me.
of course, of course. I met you at the We Are Collective workshop, I believe, and
hmm
I was attracted to your energy right away, and it seems like we're kind of on similar journeys, so I wanted to invite you on the show. You seem to be a good representative of what Eunoia is. So, um,
Thank you. I do remember meeting you. That it was like, what was it? Almost two. I think it's a year and a half ago. It's been a minute. Oh my
yeah.
God, time is flying.
Yeah, time is definitely flying. It's been a long time. But so today we're going to start with a random question from out of here. I'll pull one out, you can answer it, and then I'll answer it, and then we'll get going with the regular conversation.
Sounds good.
All right. Okay. Okay. So it says, do you have a toxic trait you're kind of okay with having?
Hmm. Oh man, that's a great question. Do I have a toxic trait? So I'm a Gemini, and actually, I guess it's not toxic, but in kind of a joking way, like the conversation always comes back to me because, like, I have a lot of Gemini traits. So it's like, for those who don't know about Geminis, it's like they want to be the center of attention and all those things. So it's not toxic, but it could be like annoying to like it's very annoying to my friends. They're like, oh, they get it, right? They're like, oh, it's back to Asia again, like the conversation. And so not a toxic trait, but I just think it's funny, and I don't mind it, but my friends think it's annoying.
That's funny. We all have one of those. So maybe toxic isn't the best word, but I would say for me, I like to isolate, which in overconsumption can be very toxic, I think. But I'm sometimes okay with having that to a certain extent because I feel like I need it to remain balanced. I'm a Libra. You mentioned you're a Gemini, and Libras are about being balanced, and that's part of my process to kind of regroup.
I
And
love this.
yes.
We're compatible.
Yes, we are. And actually, Gemini is I don't know how much you know about astrology, but Gemini is my Chiron. I still have to learn exactly what that means, but I think Chiron represents like healing. But anyways,
Oh.
I don't know if you know what yours is, but it's just interesting we've got similar signs.
Yeah, I have no idea what that means, but I'm willing to find out in the future.
Okay, so let's tell the Eunoia audience who you are and what you represent.
Okay, yeah, so when you sent me this question, I feel like it was a very kind of loaded question, like what I represent, because I feel like I represent so many different things. I'll just start off with what I do. So I'm Asia. I'm a self-love coach. I'm also a women empowerment, mental health, and wellness blogger turned podcaster as well. And I'm also a crisis counselor for Crisis Text Line. I wear so many hats. I'm like trying to remember. I'm very much into philanthropy, so I give back. I love to give back to the community. What do I represent? I feel like I didn't really know if I'm answering this correctly. I feel like as a person, I represent resilience. I feel like I don't feel like, I know that I've been through a lot, and my bounce back game has become a lot stronger. So I think I represent resilience. I have a lotus tattoo on my wrist because I pretty much came from poverty. I came from a really tiny island. It was 10 mile by 13 miles, so it's really small. And then I moved to America, and we grew up poor. So for me to live in one of the most expensive cities in America, my own boss, like really killing the game, and I'm gonna toot my own horn because I deserve it. And so that's what I represent as resilience, because I feel like I was dealt a crappy hand of cards in the beginning, but I was like, just watch me turn it around. And so my life is a reflection of that. So that's what I represent.
I think that's a great answer, and a very powerful answer. Resilience is a great quality, I think, to have, and it's built by definitely the things that you've been through, and so that's great. And I do think that you should applaud yourself, because since I've met you, time has went by fast. It's been maybe a little bit short of 2 years, but you've done a lot. Like, at the event that I was at, I believe that was your first speaking engagement, and I don't remember how many followers you had on Instagram at the time, but now you have a podcast. You've gotten so many like recognitions in the Bay Area and everywhere, and I just think it's awesome. So
thank you. Yeah, the common misconception, I think people think, and I thought before my growth journey, was that growth takes forever, but it really doesn't. Growth can start with making one different decision.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like I've been in the fast lane for sure, because right after that speaking arrangement, everything just kind of was like, not falling onto my lap because I work very hard, but a lot of opportunities have came from that. So I'm like really blessed.
So do you want to talk to us a little bit about your journey, like kind of how it started and where you are now, in a shorter synopsis if you can?
Yeah, so I am a childhood abuse survivor. Because of my childhood abuse, severe childhood abuse, physical and verbal, I developed low self-esteem, low self-worth, low confidence. And then on top of that, I came from a small island, and I had this story in my head that I could never be successful. I didn't have the money to do that. I didn't have the resources. I thought that I didn't have the intelligence, because back home, the school system wasn't that great. America, the land of opportunity, was kind of a thing for us immigrants. And then I came here, and it was like, my dad was a pizza boy. He would deliver pizza to my classmates, and it was like so embarrassing for me at the time, because I was a teenager, didn't really, was very selfish back then. And then I just moved throughout life thinking that life is just gonna suck for me forever. Like, life literally felt like a drag. I attracted toxic relationships, toxic bosses, toxic everything. And I was just like, okay, this is my life. Like, this is it, right? And until I hit rock bottom, which I think we're going to get into, I really hit rock bottom. And then I read my first self-help book, and she's kind of, are we cussing on this, by the way?
We are our authentic selves. We are cussing. Okay. We are talking about whatever we need to.
Okay, she's on my shit list right now, Rachel Hollis, just recent things she said online. But her book, Girl Wash Your Face, was the first self-help book that I read, and it just changed my life. And from there, I read that book a few months before that you saw me on that stage.
Oh, wow.
So it was like, right when I read her book, I was like, oh my gosh, the answers to life are in books. And I read book. I literally was consuming so much information. And then I started a blog writing about the tips that I had learned. And then that blog blew up in like 160 different countries within the first few months. Like, it was just doing numbers so randomly, and because I love to write. And then after that, I did the speech, and then I won Woman of the Year a few months after I launched my blog in March, won Woman of the Year in September. And then someone was like, you should be a life coach. And I was like, I don't know what that is. I didn't even know that was a thing. So then I got certified, and then I launched my life coaching business in August of last year. Was able to leave my 9-to-5 and go full-time life coaching 3 months after that. And then someone was like, you should launch a podcast. I was like, okay, say less, I guess. Give the people what they want. So I launched my podcast at the end of January this year, debuted at number 64 in my podcast genre out of like 35,000 podcasts. I just very summarized. I just was on Yahoo Finance this week. I'm still celebrating of top 10 empowerment coaches to watch in 2021, which just like still blows my mind. So to go from low self-esteem, low self-worth, low confidence, I have PTSD, anxiety, depression. So to take all of that and rise above that and really, bask in happiness and resilience and success and everything is just really, I want to show people that it doesn't really matter what cards you have in your hand. Like you can make do and you can like thrive. So that was a long-winded answer.
No,
so
that's good. And what a journey that is, and it should definitely be celebrated. It's such a rapid journey of success.
Right?
And I mean, for myself, I get uncomfortable doing things that I haven't done before. So I don't know if it was also a journey of just being uncomfortable for you, but those are a lot of things to kind of adjust to. How have you adjusted to, just blogging and then going from being recognized for speaking engagements and having a podcast and having, such a large audience, I guess, and changing within yourself?
Yeah, so for me, when I first read my first self-help book, the first thing that really got me to was like an aha moment for me is I'm not alone. I really thought that my life was shit and I was the only one who felt this way and who was literally just slept my whole days away, would go to work, go to class, and then go to sleep and just do it all over again or get drunk and suppress my pain in a really unhealthy way. And when I read that book, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm not alone in this like struggle of life and all these things. And so after that, I was like, I'm going to share my story. Mortified. I'm still mortified. I released an episode on how I opened my heart to love again. Most terrifying episode I've ever recorded. And it threw me back on the ranking for Apple Podcasts. So it was like wild, but I still have fear. I just knew that my fear, if I was held back from my fear, then I wouldn't change lives. Mm-hmm. So the reason why I push past that is because I know that I can change the world, and that's really my life mission, is to change the world, and I have been changing the world. So a lot of the big things, leaving your comfort zone requires pushing past fear. So that's really my main motivation. The more open I am, the more authentic I am. And you don't see that in social media. You see it, everyone's like, pretty pictures and white picket fence and everything. And I think the reason why people gravitate towards me is because I used to take really nice pictures with me and my ex. They were perfect pictures because I love taking pictures. And people made us the couple goals, which I didn't want. Yeah. And so then when I started my blog, I was like, hey, I have trust issues. Hey, I have daddy issues. Hey, I have all these things. I think it kind of, shocked a lot of people, and that's why they gravitated towards me, because not that many people put the ugly parts. I'm very intentional with my words, so I don't like to say ugly, but for the sake of the interview, ugly parts of relationships and stuff. So yeah,
I think that's important that you do that, because I guess you're going to see me look down to come back to different topics, but I'm just going to go with the flow of the conversation. And so I guess we can kind of get into the rock bottom at a certain point. But it's interesting that, we have this fear that we're the only, maybe not fear, but we have this feeling that we're the only one going through this terrible feeling and hitting rock bottom, and we're the only one who have shitty parts of life. But then I guess when you take a step back and realize everybody has shitty parts of life, that's a part of life, right? So we kind of just have to roll with it. And like you said, fear, I have to step out of fear every day. Like I don't like public speaking. I don't like attention. I definitely don't like being vulnerable, but here I am on a podcast sharing my biggest vulnerabilities, trying to help people because I know the importance. But I like to ask myself to overcome fear, like, what's the worst that can happen? I mean, I've already been through a lot of things that I've been super fearful of, and I've overcome it every time. So what? Are you going to die? No. Are you going to get sick? No. Are like something terrible going to happen? No. So just go for it. Like, what do you have to lose? So I think that's awesome.
Yeah, I also just going off fear, I didn't like being on video. I just started making videos this past year because I was in a social media coaching program, and she was like, sis, you have to get on video. And I was like, I don't like video. And she's like, you got to start getting on Instagram lives. And I was like, I don't like video. So is there like another way? And she's like, no, it's the most shared form is video. Mm-hmm. So I had to push past that fear, and it's still mortifying for me being on this thing, but yeah, pushing past it. So yeah, that's another thing I didn't realize. Even the greats and the successful people, they still get fear. It's just what they do with that fear.
Mm-hmm. You just can't let it hold you back. I mean, I asked you shortly after, maybe a couple months after we started following each other, if you wanted to be on my podcast. And that was before I did my second season. And I was held back by fear because I was like, I don't want to be on camera. I don't know how to interview anybody. I just kept making up excuses. And so finally I pushed past it. We're a season late, but better late than never.
Amen. Amen.
So let's talk about your rock bottom, I guess. What was your triggering life experience that made you compelled to change?
Oh man, life was very triggering. Life is still triggering for me, actually. It's just I'm not at the mercy of my triggers anymore. They really used to just put a hold on me and just really... Yeah, they used to just control a lot of my life and like fear and everything in my relationship. So my rock bottom before I went to therapy for the first time, I had trust issues that I'm still currently working on. It's a journey. And with my last relationship, we were together for 4 years, and he was the only one that was ever faithful to me. And I never talk bad about him even to this day on my podcast or on any interviews, but I had trust issues, so I was in protection mode, so we couldn't get to a level of vulnerability and a level of love because of my trust issues. And I used to have panic attacks when he went out of town, just because all of my other ex-boyfriends had cheated on me. And have you heard of PISD?
What does it stand for?
Post-infidelity stress disorder?
No.
Oh, joy. So PISD it's pretty similar to PTSD, where you have symptoms of anxiety, irritability, rage, emotional numbing, or flashbacks, but in regards to infidelity. So what my therapist said was I, had flashbacks and panic attacks of my last relationship, who was just before him. He was so manipulative and literally could convince me that the sky was red, so manipulative. So I carried that into my relationship, my next relationship. And anytime he went out of town or his phone would die, I would get flashbacks, because anytime my other ex went out of town or his phone died, he would be cheating. So I remember I had this really, really big panic attack when my ex was out of town. It lasted so long, and I literally was just on the floor of my bathroom crying for hours in the middle of the night. And after that, and mind you, I was blowing up his phone too, just repeatedly calling. I hope that all your listeners and those who watch this, I'm an open book. So I would call him over 100 times, right? That was panic attack and racing heart. And after that day, I just was like, no, this is not it, right? And we had already talked about my trust issues, and he was very patient with me, right? Just bringing it up like, hey, I don't know if this is like a healthy way to, I think maybe you need to talk to someone, like very sweet about it. But I was like, yeah, sure, I'll just read books. But, books aren't very specific to your situation, so they can't really give you the answers to everything. They can lead you in certain directions, but seeing a therapist after that really just opened my eyes and kind of like was the turning point. And then Rachel Hollis's book, and so that really got me. It was like night and day after therapy, and that's why I always talk about therapy on my page. And I think that therapy is very has a negative stigma just because of like movies. People with mental health disorders look like crazy people, and especially I'm half Asian, I'm Filipino, and in our community it's very like taboo. So therapy, just long-winded answer, therapy really changed my life after rock bottom, and then it was like sprinting after that since. So that was like 2 years ago.
Wow. Therapy, I think, to go back on that, I agree with you. I think it's very important, and the Black community is probably similar to your community as well, where I don't think it's taboo, but it's just more like, we don't do that. I don't need to talk to somebody about my problems. Like, no. And I think that that's why my role and your role is so important, is to make people comfortable with talking about things, recognizing that it's not just you who feels those emotions. We all have the same emotions in life. We just have to figure out how to cope with them and go throughout our journey. So I'm an advocate for therapy as well. I don't think it should be a last step. I think it should be a step that you try to add into your journey, because it can be very helpful and life-changing. Just to push that.
Yeah, I wish I would have went, I try not to say would have, should have, would have, could have, but had I gone way before I did, when I felt like I was drowning, as preventative measures, that's why I tell my friends and like my followers and everything, therapy is preventative measures, even for relationships. You don't have to go when you guys have problems. It's to, be prepared for when things arise.
That is true. But it's interesting, because when I went to my therapy, I felt like I was open to it, and I felt like I was drowning, but I don't think I realized how much I was drowning. And I also don't think I hit my rock bottom yet. But I went to my therapy, and I thought that she gave me very helpful information, which helped me. But in relation to my relationship and what I needed, I don't think I was open to it at that time. So I still allowed myself to go through those things for a couple of years, and then it had to smack me in the face to like change. But I still took the things that I learned from her and that she shared with me, and all those things we talked about on my journey. So it is.
Yeah, I think that lessons, they come back every time until you learn them.
Yeah.
And when they come back, they get louder.
Mm-hmm.
So when you get slapped in the face, for me too, it's because this has been a lesson that's been surfacing over and over again, but we just don't get it. And it's like, then it slaps you in the face and it's like, okay, I got it. Like, dang.
Yeah.
So yeah, for sure.
Definitely. When you were talking, you mentioned manipulation, and I kind of want to talk about some of the deeper things in this episode, where, like, how did manipulation affect you? Because I think that a lot of people don't know what gaslighting is, or they're just now becoming aware of what gaslighting is and the forms of manipulation. And I was in a manipulative relationship as well, and it was like, I didn't realize it then, but it's it has a very strong hold on you, and it's very subtle, but it's very strong as well.
I just learned what gaslighting was. I knew that it was a form of like manipulation, but I didn't know there was a term for it. And I'm in a relationship now, a new relationship, and we learned that term together, and we always joke around because it's like, I wish I never even like told you about that term, because he's like, oh, that's gaslighting. Like, that is my bad. That is, on a very not on a detrimental type of gaslighting. It's like, oops, whoops, my bad. That is gaslighting. Like, let me correct that. Thankfully, I'm in a healthy relationship right now to where it's like we're not at each other's throats like that. Very patient and understanding. But as far as manipulation, man, so the biggest thing that we'll get into later, because I saw your questions, is self-trust. When no matter what you have going on, if you ride for yourself, if you trust yourself, no, you can't be conquered. Like, if you have your own back, then you're unstoppable. What manipulation does is it makes you second guess yourself. It makes you question your decisions, yourself, your everything, and it chips away at your self-trust. And once it takes away from your self-trust, then you don't know who you are. You can be easily manipulated. Like I said, my ex manipulated me so much and made me question things, that if he told me that the sky was red, even though it's blatantly blue, he would talk me into it so much that I would start believing, like, wait, am I tripping? It may not be blue then. It's okay, I guess it's red.
Yeah.
He stole the freaking, painted a picture, and those types of people, man, I am still recovering from that relationship. That relationship was like 7 years ago, and a lot of people don't realize how detrimental someone like that. And he was just very, I don't like talking bad about people, but he just had a lot of things that he was projecting onto me, and that wasn't healed, and I suffered from it. So
yeah. Okay, so let me say this, because I struggle with even talking about some of this stuff, because I'm like, the point of this is not to badmouth my ex or anyone. The point of this is to share my experience and my perspective to help people heal. Like, whatever other people's issues are, their issues or whatever, like, I'm not here to play the blame game. So I want to make that clear as well. And so from your perspective, just so you feel a little bit better, because I probably have the same concerns as you, is just bad mouthing. But I was very easily convinced too, and I think it's important for people to recognize that what makes manipulation so terrible is that a lot of the times they come back very sweet and happy, like positive and loving to you, and then they turn around and say something that kind of confuses you and then makes you question your reality, but then they back it with another positive, so you're like kind of caught in the middle of a world of confusion and just like second guessing everything, things that that aren't really right, but then someone you trust and love, you're like, but wait, they're telling me the truth. So
I think it's called love bombing. I think the term is love bombing, when they shower you with all these sweet, charming things to get you kind of under a spell, right? And then they manipulate you once you're just so like, oh my gosh, like in awe, right? And I think I learned that. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's that the term is, love bombing.
Yeah, I think you're correct about that. But another aspect of manipulation or being in a toxic relationship is that although we're not to blame for the other person's actions, we do have to hold ourselves accountable for what we allowed ourselves to endure once we recognize it. Like, if you recognize you're unhappy at some point, you have to do something to change your unhappiness. Otherwise, you're choosing to be unhappy, right? You're kind of making the choice to stay there. So you're not intentionally doing that, but that's just kind of how life plays out. So how do you self-reflect and learn to love yourself again after not loving yourself and being able to hold yourself accountable?
Yeah, so the thing when you were talking about like unhappiness, the problem with me and unhappiness back then was there's this like Bob Marley quote that's really famous. It was like it was something like something about suffering and pain, but the ones you love are worth suffering for, right? And I stuck to that quote when I was in so much pain and suffering in my toxic relationship, because I was like, well, Bob Marley says love means suffering. So, and on top of that, I had a really different, distorted view of love because all I saw were like toxic love growing up. So for me, I didn't see it as unhappiness. And that was like a confusion for me, because I was like, growing up, love was chaos, love was toxic, love was selfish, all these things. So because my relationships reflected that, I didn't see that I was unhappy. I just thought I was in love. Once we change that idea of love and we're exposed to other things and we do a lot of digging and inner work and stuff, that's when we can change, like, oh crap, that's not even love, that's manipulation, or that's selfishness. So just being exposed to a different perspective was huge. What was your question again?
I don't I think I asked how you like hold yourself, how you change your views of self-reflection and self-awareness after kind of losing it in your relationship.
Yeah, I would say that self-reflection. So I think with nowadays, especially in our age group, we're just so busy, right? We think that we don't have time for things that serve us, like meditating and journaling. We're too busy for it, but we just don't prioritize it. And the thing with self-reflection is that before things would happen to me, I never had a space to talk about it. With my last relationship, he wasn't really a communicator at all, actually. And we never really talked and reflected on things. And on top of that, I was super busy. So I never made time to like journal, or not even just journal, just think about, oh, this cause and effect. This was because, and I never even asked myself, this is in my program, I have my clients constantly check in on themselves. It's common to ask people, hey, how are you doing? But no one asks themselves, hey, how am I doing? How are you doing, Asia? How are you doing? And doing it every day. And then digging into that. And I just didn't do that back then. So that also caused me not to see how unhappy I was and all those things. So I think that self-reflection and self-awareness is the prerequisite of growth, I always say, because if you don't take an honest look at yourself, then you really can't change the things that you need to. And back then I turned a blind eye to like all my trauma and all the things I didn't like about myself that didn't serve me and that were toxic traits of myself. I didn't want to hold myself accountable because that's hard work. I'm going to take the easy route and point my finger and call. I was so insecure. I was a mean girl back then, which is like so funny because I'm in women empowerment. So I was really insecure, and I would be so quick to point out everyone else's flaws because it was easy. There's no accountability. I don't have to change. I can just project.
Yeah.
And I was fine with that, but that's not how we should be living our lives. So
yeah. You touched on a couple of things that I wanted to talk about. First, self-awareness and self-reflection. I made my first episode topic for my podcast because I truly believe that is where it starts. Kind of like you said, you didn't really know that you were unhappy. You were in love, right? Or you were doing what you thought you knew how to do. I like to say we do the best that we can at the best that we know how to do in that moment. And if you have nothing to compare it to, like, how can you ever know what's better or what's been worse? So like my terrible relationship was my first real relationship, and I didn't really know what love was. Like, my parents were married and my sister was in a long-lasting relationship, so I knew like I wanted love and it was capable. But I think I just figured being in a relationship, it's like relationships take work, be the ride or die, be the support system. And then, the love is automatically there because they'll see you, but that's not true. People only see what they are capable of seeing or what they want to see. And if you don't know yourself enough to kind of like show your worth, they're not going to see it either. So you have to kind of reflect on those things and what you want in order to receive them. And I think that's an important thing, whether it's relationship, like love, friendship, work, even just your own happiness.
Yeah, and biggest realization, one of my biggest ones in life, is love is not enough. Love is not enough for relationships. I moved through life. I've fallen in and out of love, and now I'm reflecting, I'm like, that wasn't love. But love is not enough. People think that just because you have chemistry or history with someone, that should be the foundation of things, and you can tackle anything if you guys love each other. Absolutely false. There's communication, there's effort, there's holding each other accountable, there's calling yourself out, and it's an ongoing. Love is what do you call it? What is that quote? Love is I forgot. I don't know if it's love is like a verb. It's like it's a continuous process.
Mm-hmm.
You don't just love someone and then carry on throughout your relationship. It's work, and you have to water it every single day. You have to make choices for yourself and the other person that benefit your relationship. And when you start, I think I did a blog post on this, like my last relationship of 4 years, we both stopped watering it and then it died. And we were like, oh my gosh, what happened? It's like, we stopped watering it. That's why it dies. So love is not enough.
Definitely not. I mean, it takes a lot more than just love. And you said it takes work, but I think let's talk about the different types of work, right? Because like I said in the beginning, I thought it takes work, and that means fight through every ugly thing, whether it's like cheating or toxic behavior, like all that ugly stuff. That's not work. So to clarify, I think what Asia is talking about is like working to be a better person, working to be a good partner, working to make sure you're fulfilled and also your partner's fulfilled, and like you understand each other in those ways. That doesn't mean consistently putting up with ugly things.
So let me clarify. I love that you said that. So love is work, but shouldn't be hard.
Yeah.
I am learning now. I'm in the healthiest relationship I've ever been in, and it's easy to, not easy in a sense where I don't have to work. It's easy to choose it's easy to choose to squash things over pride. It's easy to communicate over not communicating. It's easier to choose the choices that best serve us in this relationship because it's a mutual like effort, right? Mm-hmm. Back then it was like it wasn't balanced. Like I felt like I was going 100 and they were going like 10%, right? So that's when it's hard. That's when it's not reciprocated. But love should be easy. It's easy to choose my partner and to grow this relationship. So I had to clarify that.
So was it hard for you to be able to accept love again? And how did you like open your heart back up to relationships and love?
I love how you said that. I just posted a podcast episode on Wednesday this week of 10 lessons I learned that to open up my heart back again. Self-trust is one of them. Building up my self-trust in myself. And another thing, going into this relationship, I told myself that if I cannot choose myself at the end of the day, then this is not the relationship for me. Mm-hmm. So, for example, I was a 5 a.m., I was part of the 5 a.m. club where I woke up every day. This was when I was working on my business. So I would work on my business from like 6 a.m. to 8 a.m. and then go to my 9 to 5. And then when I got home, it was like 6 to 10. So this was when I was trying to transition into full-time life coaching. So those days were long. And, he would want to stay the night. And I told him, like, on the weekdays, I said, if you stay the night, you have to leave at 5 a.m. Like, you can't be, and I'm not trying to be, like, rude or anything, right? I was just like, I have a routine that I stick to, 5 a.m., work out, meditate, all these things before I start working. And then I made sure to put myself first. And this was the first time I put myself first. I always put everyone else first. So that's when I knew, like, oh yeah, I'm ready to start dating again, because I choose me no matter what, and you will never lose if you put yourself first. There's absolutely no way that you could ever lose in life. Honestly, that's the biggest realization for me. So there's a lot of things that I had to do, like, but that was the number one. That was kind of my meter. If I felt myself not honoring my boundaries, not making choices that best served me, then I knew that it wasn't time yet to date. Because when I date, I go all in. I'm a giver. I think a lot of us women are givers, and we go all in and we love hard. So I knew that I wasn't going to get into another relationship until I put myself first.
I think that's a huge, huge key, because sometimes when people get into relationships, I think oftentimes they lose themselves and it becomes codependent, and you just go with the flow of what your partner wants to do. And I'll speak for myself, because that's what I did in my previous relationships. And they turned codependent and they turned unhealthy, and I lost myself, and that's just not the way to go. But if you find ways to keep your soul fulfilled and your own self happy, and you can stick to those things and know that you're good enough for people to stick around, even if you say, no, I can't do this today because I'm choosing me, whatever that reason is, I think that's empowering. And you need your own time. You have to remain individuals when you come together, not just combine as one.
Yeah, that was a really big thing for me, is I'm my own person now. And in the middle of my last relationship, my 4-year relationship, which was really serious. Like, we were literally about to get married and, like, start a life together and everything. And it wasn't that I lost myself in that. I started my self-growth journey in the middle of it. So it was very two different Asias. He saw two different Asias. But I love what you said about that, because when you don't know yourself, what I've done in the past was I molded myself so that I was likable to everyone, including especially men, because I had daddy issues, right? And I was kind of desperate for love from a man, because I never knew what that meant growing up. So I would mold myself. Oh, you like baseball? I like baseball too. I fucking hate baseball. It's boring. Like, just little things like that. And choosing yourself is not easy, but it gets easier. It gets easier every time you choose yourself. Mm-hmm. So if you say no to a friend for hiking because you want to do yoga and you say no, your no's will get stronger. You'll be more unapologetic. So we have to push past the discomfort at first, and that's why it's uncomfortable, because we're not used to saying no. So I love that you said that, because it definitely gets easier. Not in the beginning, though.
No, it's definitely not easy. I don't think anything about this journey, though, is necessarily easy. I think whether it's relationship or anything, just this journey of life, the journey of Eunoia, which means beautiful thinking, it takes work. You have to do the self-reflections, the self-reflection. And you mentioned earlier that who wants to do self-reflection and work on yourself? That's ugly. It's ugly. It's hurtful. It's emotions. It's like, yuck. I want to avoid it and run from it all the time. But if you avoid it and run from it all the time, what good are you doing yourself? You're just always going to be running. And I don't want to run my whole life.
In the same circle, and then you get deeper into that circle. Mm-hmm. So